Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're walking in Memphis. The topic of this Walking in Memphis, USWA Wrestling from December 12th, 1992. Now if you want to check out the show I'm about to review, there is a link right here in the description. Pause the video, go watch that, come back, or if you don't care about spoilers, watch my review and then go watch it. If you haven't seen any of my shows before, I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. Let's jump right into it. We start the show off with Eddie Marlin, who's then followed up by Jerry Lawler. Lawler shows highlight videos of a title match against Koko B. Ware, where Koko basically cheated to win the championship from him with the assistance of Mike Samples and Burt Prentice. This was at the very beginning of the USWA and WWF at the time working together. We see Koko cutting a heel promo, which was kind of funny for that time because this was about the time he was in high energy and clearly a babyface in the WWE, but in Memphis a heel. After the Koko promo, we go back to Lawler, who cuts another short promo. For that segment, I thought that was all pretty good. I always mention this on these when you see characters or wrestlers that are not what you expect, seeing a heel Koko B. Ware once he's become the Birdman, or last week, the video I reviewed, you seen Hillbilly Jim as Harley Davidson. Kind of neat seeing these little pockets in history. Like I said, I'm giving that segment a 5. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this, on these we rated segment to segment, basically commercial break to commercial break. Next up, we get a match with Jeff Jarrett versus Mr. Clyde. This was a pretty good match. Jeff Jarrett to me has always been a really good in-ring wrestler. He gets a lot of flack because of his backstage stuff, but I think people seem to forget just how good he is in the ring, and he always has been. Even at this time, very young into his career, I think he might have been into wrestling 5 years at this point. He was still really good. This is a really fun match. Jarrett picks up the win here. Following that, we get an interview with Richard Lee and the Moondogs. Pretty good little segment. Lawler's still on commentary because he said he was not going to stay out there till Prentice and Samples came out. For that match and that promo, I'm giving that a 4. Thought it was good. Not quite as good as the first promos, but still pretty good. Next up, following that, we get a segment with Jerry Lawler and Eddie Marlin. Eddie Marlin comes out, says he's talked to Jack Tunney. Lawler's going to get his rematch with Koko, and Burt Prentice will be in a cage. Mike Samples will be in a cage, and Burt Prentice will be tied to Eddie Marlin, or vice versa. It's going to be one or the other, which Lawler seems to agree. Decides he's going to leave commentary because he got what he wanted. That brings out Burt Prentice and Mike Samples, who cut a little bit of a promo. Prentice takes off his shirt, which is funny, but funny for the wrong reasons. Then they introduce their new tag team, the Bruise Brothers, Ron and Don Harris. If you watch these videos for a time, you understand I dislike these guys, but I try to be as subjective as I can. They're going up against Tony Williams and TD Steele. They basically run right through Williams and Steele. Another squash match for them, another time where they're just put over like they're world destroyers, like they're Doom or the Road Warriors at this point. Bruise Brothers do pick up the win on this one. For that old segment, I'm giving it a 4. Mostly based off of Prentice and Samples' promo and the Lawler and Marlin interaction. The match was pretty much nothing to write home about, but it carried the segment. The segment itself was pretty good. Going from that, we come back from break and we have an interview segment with Burt Prentice and Leslie Bellinger, being done by Corey Macklin. Bellinger keeps hitting Corey. She has punching gloves on. She keeps punching Corey to the point where Corey starts pushing back and kind of gets in a little thing with Prentice and Bellinger until Miss Texas, aka Jacqueline, comes out. There's a whole thing here. Eddie Marlin comes out. Corey says, "I'm going to quit." Miss Texas is asking him, instead of quitting, be the referee in my match against Bellinger, or be my manager. Corey still walks off. Pretty neat little segment. I know I've seen Corey get messed with a lot in commentary, but this is one of the few times you've seen where he stood up for himself. Going from that, we get a promo from Jeff Jarrett, who says a poem that was given to him by his father, which then brings out Burt Prentice and Mike Samples. Jarrett ends up smacking Prentice, which brings out Brian Christopher, who attacks him. For that old segment between the Corey Macklin, Leslie Bellinger stuff, Miss Texas coming out, Jarrett and Christopher's interaction here, I'm giving this a 5. I thought it was highly entertaining. After we come back from break, we get Eddie Marlin coming out, which brings back Corey Macklin. Corey says that he's agreed with Eddie that he'll be the referee for the match between Miss Texas and Leslie Bellinger. pretty much the only thing on that segment. I'm giving that a 3 for that one. From that, we go into our next segment, which is highlights of Brian Christopher, which was probably set to music at some point, but I'm guessing whoever uploaded this took the music out so they wouldn't get copyright strike against them. After the highlights, we go right into a Brian Christopher promo where he destroys the poem, which was basically like a poster. That leads us right into Brian Christopher versus Ricky Hayes. Christopher, during the match, is calling Ricky Hayes Jeff Jarrett, pretty much toying with him, which brings out Jarrett by the end of the match, who attacks Christopher, ends up getting a DQ win, I'm guessing for Christopher since Jarrett wasn't helping him. They didn't mention who the winner was, so maybe it was just thrown out, but I'm guessing it was a DQ for Brian Christopher because Jeff Jarrett attacked him. After that, Jarrett cuts a little bit of a promo. I'm giving that whole segment a 4. I thought it was pretty good. Next up, we get some local advertisements for matches coming up, then a short promo with Bill Dundee and Danny Davis. I thought this was pretty good. I've seen them both have better promos. I'm giving this one a 3. And finally, we roll into the last segment of the show. We get the Masters of Terror going up against Spike Lewis and Don Kelly. Masters of Terror are just basically a generic mask team, half red and half purple or maroon, or it's a weird colored thing. Masters of Terror pretty much dominate the match, roll over Lewis and Kelly, get the win here, and then we go off with the final thing of the show, another promo with Bill Dundee and Danny Davis. This one's a little bit better than their other promo. I'm still going to give that a 3 because I feel like even though they were probably trying to make the Masters of Terror something here, with the stars that were on the show and the wrestlers on here, Jeff Jarrett, Brian Christopher, the Moondogs, Jerry the King Lawler, even the Bruise Brothers, if you would have put the Bruise Brothers match on here, I think it would have fit better than this. For that, I have to knock it down. I'm giving it a 3 because it didn't feel like it was the main event of the show. Overall, I thought this was an enjoyable show. I probably lean towards giving it a 4. I definitely would recommend checking it out. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Again, as always, a lot of good promo work from most of your usual suspects. Lawler, Christopher, Jeff Jarrett, Bill Dundee. A lot of good clips like we always see. Some good, decent squash matches. I mean, as good as a squash match could be. Some great interaction story developments with Corey Macklin, Miss Texas, and Leslie Bellinger. Prentice and Samples having their fingerprints all over the show. A pretty solid show altogether. Like I said, I'm going to give it a 4. With all that being said, if you made it to the end here, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you made it to the end, I just threw some shade on them, so let's give them some positive. Throw a Masters of Terror in the comments if you made it to the end here. With that being said, my name is George Coles, and we've been walking in Memphis.